I almost didn't believe it when I stumbled across the post, just scrolling through a forum late one night. Someone was describing a delivery route, similar to the one I used to run, the same kind of quiet industrial parks, the same late hours. It was the detail about the loading docks, though, the specific way the shadows fell there, that stopped me cold. Reading their words felt familiar, like remembering something I'd actively tried to forget. The paperwork for the regional dispatch gig was surprisingly thorough, more than any temp agency I'd used before. Background check, psych evaluation felt like applying for a security clearance, not pushing papers around a warehouse. Still, the pay was good, steady, and honestly, after everything with the deliveries, I needed steady. I needed to not think so much. The office was on the outskirts of town, near the industrial park. Everything was new, glass and steel, all minimalist furniture. Irene, the woman who interviewed me, was efficient. No small talk, just questions, a quick tour, and a stack of manuals. She kept glancing at the security cameras, which seemed excessive, but I figured it was the kind of place that took loss prevention seriously. I started the next day, mostly inputting delivery manifests, tracking shipments, tedious but manageable. I found a diner a couple blocks over, Trudy's good coffee, greasy spoon perfection. One of the drivers, Rand, was in there every morning. He was an older guy, been with the company forever, and seemed to know everything. He said they were switching to a new tracking system, something about streamlining routes. That's when I noticed it. On Rand's coffee cup, a sticker, a faded, almost worn-away sticker, but it was the logo from my old delivery company, the one I quit after, well, after everything. He must have grabbed it from an old cooler or something. I asked him about it casually. "Oh yeah," he said, taking a sip. "Got a whole box of those at the dock. Felix is always giving them away. He says they're good for patching holes in boxes." Felix. I hadn't heard that name in years. He was the guy who always worked loading Dock 7, the one who always seemed to be watching. It was probably nothing, just a weird coincidence. Rand was probably right about the boxes, but still, it felt off. It was the sticker again on a manifest for a delivery to Clark Industrial. Just there, same faded blue, same blocky font, Old Man Hemlock's logo, my old company. I hadn't seen that thing in 5 years or more. I asked Rand about it. He just shrugged. Supplier probably uses the same adhesive. It happens. I wanted to believe him. I really did, but Hemlock was bankrupt, sold off for scrap. The logo shouldn't exist anymore. A new run came up. A drop at loading Dock 9 at the Westlake complex. I flagged it for Dex, our most reliable driver. He usually took those runs, but Irene stopped me. Dex is tied up with a priority shipment. Jerome's available. Jerome was new, quiet. He never made eye contact, and he always asked a lot of questions about the routes, the delivery windows. Just seemed eager, I thought. I assigned it anyway. Later, I checked the dispatch logs. Jerome hadn't logged a check-in from Westlake. That wasn't necessarily bad. Sometimes the signal was spotty out there. Still, I felt a prickle. I tried calling him. It went straight to voicemail. I decided to drive out there myself just to confirm. It was getting dark. Westlake was empty. Too empty. Dock 9 was dark. The roller door closed, and leaning against a pillar, watching me, was Felix, from loading Dock 7. He didn't say anything, just looked. He was wearing a high-vis vest, but not ours, some kind of security uniform maybe. I told myself he was a guard, new to the complex. Maybe he'd transferred over from somewhere. It made sense, right? Lots of industrial parks shared security personnel. I backed out slowly and called Irene. Jerome hasn't checked in. Felix is at Westlake. There was a pause. Felix? You mean from Hemlock? Irene sounded flat. That's odd. He's a facilities inspector now, apparently. He handles maintenance requests for all the complexes. Irene hadn't heard back from anyone about Jerome, not Rand, not dispatch, nothing, just silence. I kept checking the Westlake manifests, looking for a discrepancy, anything. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. I went back to Westlake, telling myself I was just being thorough. I needed to see if anything had fallen off the truck, some misplaced paperwork. Felix was there. Again. He was standing near the guard shack talking to Clark, the security guy. He gave me that same, not a smile exactly, more like acknowledgement, like he knew I'd be back. Clark waved me through without a word, which was strange. He usually asks about the load and checks the bills. I found the bay Jerome was assigned. It was empty. Clean, too clean. There was no stray cardboard, no packing slip remnants, nothing. And then I saw it, scratched into the concrete floor, under where the truck's rear wheels would be, the triangle, the same one from the Hemlock warehouse. My gut twisted. It wasn't random. It wasn't just me remembering things. This was deliberate. Someone was sending a message. I figured it had to be someone still holding a grudge from Hemlock. Maybe someone Felix knew. Maybe Felix was the one doing it. A weird, passive-aggressive campaign against anyone connected to the old company. As I was staring at it, the overhead lights flickered, then died, plunging the bay into near darkness. Emergency lights kicked on, red and weak. And then I heard the metal shutter on the far end of the bay, the one I didn't even know existed, start to roll down. Fast. I yelled, but the noise swallowed it. I scrambled for the exit, nearly tripping over myself, and managed to get the bay door open just as the shutter slammed shut with a resounding clang. It would have pinned me, just like that. I didn't look back. I drove straight to Rand's office, tires squealing. I sat in Rand's office for what felt like hours, just repeating what happened with the shutter. Rand kept saying it was probably a malfunction, a safety override glitch. He called Clark, the security guard, who acted like I was making it up. He said the shutters were regularly inspected. It didn't feel like a malfunction. It felt deliberate. I insisted on a police report. Rand finally agreed, mostly to get me to leave him alone. 2 officers came out, young guys barely out of the academy. They took my statement, walked the bay, and glanced at the triangle. One of them said it looked like someone had been messing around with spray paint. They didn't seem to take it seriously. Jerome was still missing, and now this. It was like they thought I was stressed, imagining things. Irene, the dispatcher, called me the next day. She said she'd been looking into Jerome's last runs. He'd been assigned to Westlake more than usual lately, which she figured was just luck of the draw, but she also said Felix, the inspector, had requested all of Jerome's delivery manifests from the past month. Why would an inspector need those? It started to click. Felix, always there, always watching. He wasn't just doing inspections, he was coordinating things. Maybe he was running some kind of internal investigation, and Jerome had stumbled onto something about Westlake. Maybe it was about stolen goods or some kind of illegal operation happening inside the complex. That felt right. That explained the security, the secrecy, the feeling of being watched. I decided to do some digging myself. I found a local private investigator, Dex. He seemed competent, if a little cynical. I told him about Jerome, the triangle, Felix, the shutter. He took notes, asked a lot of questions, and then said he'd check into it. He asked about my background, my work history, why I was driving the route Jerome had. It felt invasive. He said it was standard procedure, but it didn't feel standard. It felt like I was the one being investigated. Dex called back 1 week later. He said he'd hit a wall. Jerome's background was clean, too clean. He had no debts, no gambling, and no obvious enemies. He'd checked the Westlake manifests, and nothing jumped out. He'd even spoken to Tad. Jerome's dispatcher, Tad, said Jerome was a good driver, reliable, and kept to himself. Nothing unusual. Dex sounded frustrated. He said he was starting to think I was chasing ghosts. I didn't believe him. Something was happening. I could feel it. Then I got a call from Irene at dispatch. She said there was a new route available, a shorter one with all local deliveries. She said it was a favor to me, knowing I was still upset about Jerome. It sounded too good to be true. It was too good to be true, but I took it. I needed the work, and honestly, a smaller route meant less time around Westlake. The first couple of deliveries were normal. Small businesses, office buildings. Then came a request, a pickup at a loading dock on the far side of the complex, Bay 42. I remembered that bay. It was near where I'd almost been trapped. Felix was there, of course, leaning against a stack of pallets, watching. He just nodded as I pulled up. Hector, a driver I'd seen around, was already there waiting to unload. He gave me a strange look, A quick shake of the head. "Just be careful," he muttered, barely audible. Hector said Westlake was shifting things around, consolidating routes. He said Felix was in charge of it all. Streamlining the process, it sounded like a reasonable explanation, a reorganization. That's all it was. I told myself that. Still, as I backed into the bay, I checked my mirrors, twice, every time now, before I even put the truck in gear. Just a quick glance, making sure nothing was moving, nothing was coming. It's just what I do now. It's strange revisiting this now, years later. Life moved on. I got a new job, a different route to work. Everything felt normal again, surprisingly quickly. But sometimes a place just sticks with you, a little pocket of wrongness you can't quite shake. I started writing it down because a friend asked about my old delivery route and realizing how easily it all could have gone differently. Well, I needed to get it straight in my head, if nothing else. And then it started happening with the deliveries. Not right away, not for a few days after I noticed the frogs. I was on the Hawthorne Run, mostly older houses, big lawns, people who actually answered the door. Pleasant enough. First one, Mrs. Agnes Peabody. She had a frog, small, the same glazed ceramic right next to her welcome mat. I remember thinking, that's cute. She was a cat lady, always talking about her Persians, so it didn't really register as weird. Then, 2 houses later, Tad Miller, he was getting a box of dog food, and there it was again. Same frog, different porch, same frog. Okay, that was odd. I chalked it up to, I don't know, a garden center sale, everyone buying the same thing. I even asked Tad, "Nice frog, where'd you get it?" He just blinked at me, said his daughter brought it home from school, a craft project, apparently. It kept happening. Not every house, but enough. Enough to make me start looking for them, almost expecting them. And the GPS started acting up around the same time. It would tell me to turn onto streets that didn't make sense, dead ends, industrial access roads. I'd ignore it, go the logical route, but then it would recalculate, insisting I turn around. I figured it was a glitch. The map data was old in this part of town. Yesterday, it directed me into the old Boyd manufacturing complex. Totally wrong. Fenced off empty warehouses. I should have just bypassed it, but the GPS was relentless. Kept recalculating, kept sending me back towards that gate. I finally just followed it. Stupid, I know. And that's when I saw the truck. Another delivery van, same company colors, parked right inside the gate, and a man standing next to it, just waiting. I just stood there. The guy by the van wasn't doing anything, just watching me. He was middle-aged. Maybe he was wearing a blue work shirt. The same as mine. He didn't wave, didn't yell, just present. I put the van in park and killed the engine. It felt weirdly loud when it stopped, like the silence rushed in to fill the space. I called dispatch. "Hey, GPS sent me into Boyd Manufacturing. Just checking if there's a delivery here I missed." Static. Then Mort's voice, all breezy. "Boyd? Nah, nothing on your route, Tad. Faulty signal probably. Happens around those old buildings. Recalculate and get back on track." I started to do as he said, but then I noticed it. A single ceramic frog, identical to the ones I'd been seeing at the houses, sitting on the hood of his van, right in the center. I hadn't seen anyone put it there. I backed up fast, nearly clipping a rusted-out forklift. I got turned around and found my way back to the main road. I avoided the GPS after that, stuck to roads I knew, even if it meant longer routes. I figured maybe the system was glitching, prioritizing older data or something. Maybe it was pulling addresses from a previous route someone else ran. But then, 2 days later, it happened again. Different industrial park, further out. This one was mostly empty, but not abandoned like Boyd. More waiting. And there, leaning against a loading dock, was a stack of pallets covered in blue tarps. And on top of each tarp, a ceramic frog. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I just kept going. But I kept checking my mirrors. And then I saw him, not the guy from Boyd, but someone else, in a black car, approximately 200 yards back. He wasn't tailing me exactly, more like appearing and disappearing between turns, like he knew where I was going before I did. The black car was still there. It wasn't following exactly, more repositioning. It was anticipating. I told dispatch I was rerouted again and demanded a supervisor. Mort answered, sounding annoyed. He said the system was undergoing minor adjustments and to just follow the app. Adjustments. I hung up before he could finish. I turned onto a service road, past a chain-link fence with faded no trespassing signs. The GPS insisted this was the way, and there they were. The vans, 3 of them, parked haphazardly, engines off, and the frogs, ceramic frogs scattered on the dashboards, hanging from the rearview mirrors, same as before. I slowed, intending to just drive past, but then one of the drivers, a guy with a shaved head, Derek, I think from the first warehouse, started walking toward my van. He wasn't smiling. 2 others were getting out of the other vans, moving with a deliberate casualness that felt wrong, like they were waiting for something. For me. I jammed the van into reverse. I tried to get back to the main road, but they'd blocked it. Another van faced the opposite direction, and Derek was closer now, his face blank. He raised a hand, palm open, like he was trying to signal me to stop. My heart hammered. I floored it, aiming for a gap between Derek's van and the fence. I clipped the fence, metal screaming. The van lurched, throwing me against the door. I glanced in the rearview mirror. They weren't chasing, they were just watching. I didn't stop driving until I hit the highway. I pulled over at the next rest stop, shaking. I looked at the damage to the van, a long scrape along the side, and the fence post had taken a chunk out of the wheel well. This wasn't about faulty GPS anymore. It was some kind of test, some twisted recruitment thing. They wanted to see if I'd brake, if I'd just follow the directions no matter what, and I almost did. I really almost did. I noticed something then, tucked under the windshield wiper on the passenger side. A small blue ceramic frog. I called the police, of course, after I just sat there in the rest stop parking lot for 1 hour, just staring at the frog. They came out, a young officer, and looked at the scrape on the van, the broken plastic in the wheel. Well, I told him about the GPS, the rerouting, the black car, Derek, and the other guy at the warehouse. He wrote it all down, very slowly. He asked about the frog. I showed it to him. He turned it over in his hands like it was evidence in a kid's prank. Odd, he said. Any idea who might do something like this? I said I didn't. I didn't mention the vans. I didn't want to sound crazy. I figured if I just focused on the damage, on the fact that someone had deliberately tried to run me off the road, they'd take it seriously. They didn't, not really. He filed a report and said they'd look into it. I got the impression that meant it would go in a pile with all the other odd things that happen on the interstate. I drove back to the distribution center in daylight. It looked normal, too normal, like nothing had happened. I asked to speak to my supervisor, a man named Walt. I told him what happened about the GPS issues and the near accident. I left out the part about the frog. He listened, nodded, then said it was probably just a glitch in the system. Those things happen, you know, satellites, interference, he suggested. I take a day off. He said I seemed shaken up. I went back to the warehouse where I'd seen the first van. It was gone, vanished. But there, on the cracked asphalt where it had been, was a single blue ceramic shard, a piece of a frog. It was like they were taunting me. I thought then maybe it was Derek. Maybe he was running some kind of bogus delivery scam, using the vans and the rerouting to, I don't even know, to steal freight. But it didn't feel right. It felt bigger than that, more deliberate. I felt like I was a piece on a board, and someone else was moving me around. It's been years, I guess. I don't drive for a living anymore. Not deliveries, anyway. I tried to go back a couple times, but I couldn't. Not after. It wasn't the fear. Not exactly. It was the feeling of being watched, even when I wasn't on a route, like the roads themselves remembered. I still think about the frog sometimes. The blue ceramic. I looked for information online, tried to find other reports of GPS glitches leading people to those kinds of places. Nothing. Just endless forums about bad maps and software updates. I even went back to that rest stop a few weeks after everything, just to look. It was just a rest stop. Empty, clean, boring. I started calling Walt more after I quit. Not to talk about it, never about that, just to check in. He'd always been distant, efficient, a company man. But he'd always been fair. I figured he was just trying to protect the company, cover things up. Maybe those routes were part of some new efficiency program they hadn't rolled out yet, and the GPS was testing it. It sounded stupid, even to me, but I needed something to explain it. Now, I help BA at her flower shop a couple days a week. She's my aunt, but we weren't close growing up. I just started showing up, offering to unload trucks, arrange bouquets, anything. She doesn't ask questions. She just lets me be there. She always knew how to pay attention. Bea does. She notices things. I watch her hands move, carefully stripping thorns. She'll look up and catch me staring, and just smile. Yesterday, she was sorting through a delivery of ceramic pots, blue ones. And for a second, just a flash, I couldn't breathe. She saw my face and handed me a pair of gloves. "These roses need pruning," she said, and I took them. But I kept glancing at those blue pots, wondering if she knew. It was the kind of place you'd drive right past without a second glance, a little ways off the main road, just a long gravel driveway leading back to a collection of buildings that had clearly seen better days. I was delivering for a small local service, mostly groceries and prescriptions to folks a bit removed from town. That route specifically felt isolated, with properties stretching out, each one swallowed by overgrown fields and trees. I remember thinking it was quiet, even for the countryside. The gravel crunched under the tires as I backed out of Hal's driveway. It was one of those drives where you just feel watched. Not like someone was there, exactly. Just the weight of the trees, I guess, and the way the buildings seemed to lean in. I checked the rearview mirror a couple of times, but nothing. Probably just me being jumpy. I pulled back onto the main road and checked my scanner. A delivery for Stella in Jericho. Not a bad run, maybe 20 minutes. As I was switching over to the GPS, I remembered the package for Hal. It was a set of those high-powered LED work lights, the kind you use for construction. Odd for someone living out in the sticks like that. Still, people use them for everything, right? Security, hobbies. Then I remembered the light in the window. That quick flash, it was too fast to be someone just walking by with a flashlight, and the house looked completely dead. Maybe he was testing the lights when they arrived. That had to be it. He was eager to get them, wanted to see if they worked. I passed a county maintenance truck. Pavel was driving. We waved. He's a good guy, Pavel. Always has a joke. I wondered if he knew Hal. Everybody knows everybody, eventually out here. I didn't recognize the name, though. I glanced in the mirror again. A beat-up pickup, dark blue, was back there. I didn't pay it much mind at first, lots of pickups, but it was keeping pace. Not tailgating, just there. I sped up a little. It sped up a little, okay? Maybe they were heading the same way. Jericho isn't that small. Still, something felt off. I told myself it was the lingering feeling from Hal's place. Just needed to focus on the next delivery. Stella's easy peasy. Stella's was normal. Old lady smelled like cinnamon, tipped $1.50. I was already feeling silly about the truck. Probably just someone going the same way. Jericho traffic can be weird. Still, I took a different turn heading toward Jerome's. Usually I cut through Old Mill Road, a shorter route, but I swung wide, out onto 34, just felt better. Then I saw the blue pickup again. Not right behind me, but a couple cars back, and it wasn't going the same way as before. It had turned onto 34 too. I checked my mirror repeatedly. It wasn't speeding up, wasn't tailgating, just there. Jerome wasn't home. He'd left a note on the door, out fishing, leave by shed. I left the package, and as I walked back to the van, I saw Pavel. He was pulling out of his driveway, slow as ever in that beat-up Volvo. I waved. He waved back, but he was looking past me, toward the road. And that's when I saw it, Hal, standing by his mailbox. It was miles from anywhere, and he had no business being out there. He was just watching, not waving, not acknowledging me, just standing there. I thought maybe he'd forgotten something, needed another delivery. but he was facing away from his house, looking directly at me. And then he slowly raised his hand. Not a wave, but like he was adjusting something, like the visor on a cap. He wasn't wearing a cap. I got in the van, locked the doors. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Maybe he was eccentric. But Pavel had seen him too. And Pavel wasn't looking at me with friendly curiosity. He was looking concerned. I put the van in drive and floored it. I wasn't going back that way. Not ever. I didn't go back to Hal's place. I took the long way around, even though dispatch would have a fit. Every time I passed a blue pickup, my stomach clenched. It wasn't always the same one, but the color was everywhere. I tried to focus on the deliveries, but I kept checking my mirrors. Then there was Stella. Old Stella Henderson. Sweetest lady. Always had a Werther's original for me. But today, she was off. She kept asking if I was all right. She said she saw a man, a peculiar man, watching me at her mailbox yesterday while she was getting her mail. She didn't recognize him. She said he was just standing there, watching. I told her it was probably just a neighbor, trying to be polite, you know? But then she said, "He was looking at you, dear, not around you." I finished her delivery and practically ran back to the van. I called Jerome, the depot manager, and told him I needed to reroute. I said I felt unsafe on that part of the route. He grumbled about efficiency, but he agreed. I was halfway through the new route when my phone buzzed. It was a picture message sent from an unknown number. It was a picture of my van, parked in front of my house. My heart hammered. I pulled over, hands shaking. How? I hadn't been home since starting the route. It had to be an old photo. People take pictures of delivery vans all the time, but the license plate was clear. It was my van, and the timestamp was 20 minutes ago. I floored it. I needed to get home, to check on things, to see if someone was there. I sped through the back roads, ignoring the speed limit, ignoring everything but getting home. I saw the blue pickup again, further ahead, and nearly ran a stop sign trying to avoid it. It didn't even try to pass me. It just stayed there, like it was letting me run. I just drove straight to the station. I had to tell someone. Jerome was on duty, the night manager. He listened, which was more than I expected. I showed him the picture, my van in front of my house. He squinted at it and said the resolution was awful. It could be anyone's van anywhere. He asked if I'd been arguing with a customer. No arguing. Just weird. And the trucks. All the blue trucks. Jerome sighed. Logging season, Nate. Lots of contractors in the area. Probably just coincidence. Coincidence, right? I asked him to file a report anyway. He did, but I could tell he thought I was losing it. I asked if there'd been any complaints about stalking or harassment from other drivers. He checked and came up empty. I went home, but I couldn't shake it. I set up a dash cam. A good one, front and rear facing, with a parking mode. It wouldn't stop anything, but maybe it would catch something. I spent the rest of the night reviewing the footage from the last few weeks, fast-forwarding and rewinding. Then I saw him. Hal. Old Hal from the hardware store. I'd helped him load some bags of concrete a few months back. He was following me. Not close, not aggressively, but consistently on different routes, always a few cars back, always in a blue pickup. I figured it out. He'd probably seen me, thought I was someone else, maybe someone who owed him money. A case of mistaken identity. It was stupid, but it made sense. I could handle a misunderstanding. I just needed to talk to him. I found his store number online and called the next morning. No answer. I drove by and the store was closed. A handwritten sign on the door said, "Family emergency." That felt wrong. I tried calling again. Still nothing. Then I saw the local news website, a small article, "Construction accident claims, life of local businessmen," a picture of Hal, and beneath it, a list of other names, people I'd delivered to, people who hadn't been seen in 1 week. I kept replaying the news report in my head, trying to find a connection. Hal, Jerome, Ada, all deliveries within the last month, all gone. The police didn't seem to think there was a connection, just a string of unfortunate accidents. They asked me a lot of questions, mostly about my route and my schedule. Routine stuff. They didn't ask about Hal. Not really, just if I remembered delivering to him, if he seemed normal. I started noticing things. Small things. A blue truck, like the ones I'd seen, parked a few blocks over from my usual lunch spot. A man who looked a lot like Pavel, one of the others, walking his dog on a street I don't usually drive. It was probably just coincidence. A big town, people look alike, but I started changing my route, taking longer ways around. I told myself it was just to be safe. I haven't been back to that gas station. I can't explain why. It's just I keep picturing Stella behind the counter, dismissing me. Maybe she knew something. Maybe she recognized Hal's name. I started checking my deliveries obsessively, cross-referencing addresses with news reports and obituaries. It was exhausting. I convinced myself it was just grief, survivor's guilt, that I was looking for patterns where there weren't any. I still do the job, but I don't stop to help people change tires anymore, not even if they wave me down. I used to do that all the time. I always figured it was the neighborly thing. Now I just keep driving. This morning, I was pulling into a driveway, and the sunlight hit the mailbox just right. For a split second, it looked angled, like someone had deliberately positioned it to block the house number. Just the light, I told myself, just the light.